Computer Science AP class.
It's me, Edwin, and I'm back with more variables. So today we're going to be talking about the difference between global variables and local variables. So with a global variable, it is what it actually means. Global. It means it's represented in the entire program that you're working on.
All right, guys, so let's dig into this code on Snap to understand better the difference between global variables and local variables. So we're going to start working with this Click Alonso game that you started working with before. You probably had Alonso here moving around, and when you clicked on him, he would move, right? So we're going to be adding a score to this, but before we do that, let's try to understand what the difference between global and local variables are. Here, on the left-hand side, we have all these options, and one of them is variables. Now, if we go to make a variable, we're actually making a global variable here. I'm going to write that in, global variable. Now, what this means is that this is going to be able to be used across the entire program. It doesn't matter whether it's in this hat, another sprite, whatever. It doesn't matter. This global variable will be available the whole time. So let's just say we have Alonso here. And what we want to do is when the green flag is clicked, the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to set this global variable to 0, right? So set global variable to 0. We press this, global variable is set to 0, right? So now if I click on our friend Alonso, I want the global variable to move up 1. So what do? We go here to the controls, and then when I am clicked. Now remember, we are in Alonso. This is the Alonso sprite, right? We're in the sprite of Alonso. And so we're going to do the scripts that are specific to Alonso. So when I am clicked, right, we're going to change a global variable by 1. So now when we click it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So every time we click on him, his global variable goes up by 1. We press the green flag right here, it should go back to 0. And it does. Great. So that is perfect, right? So now if we made a new sprite, let's just make a new sprite. I'm just going to make something like a circle. Whoa, that's a big circle. Can I move them? Okay, kind of a weird circle. Actually, I kind of want to make him red just because. So, boop, he's red. Okay. Now we have, and I'm going to name this instead of just sprite, I'm going to call it red button. So let me, red button, right? So I put that here, right? And we could add a script to him too. So we could say, same thing. Now remember, we are in the red button sprite. We're in the script specific for the red button. So when I am clicked, meaning when the red button is clicked, right? So we want to change global variable by 1. So now if we click him, right? It's going up. Global variable is moving up. And if I click here, global variable is also moving up, right? So as you can see, this global variable is for 2 different scripts, right? So maybe this red we have here, we're going to do this red is going to make it go +1. We could even have a third sprite. So let's do a third sprite. We're going to have another thing like this, right? And maybe we'll make it green this time. So you do this pick the little green thing, then you can pick this bucket and then make the color green. Okay, great. So let's move it over. And now with this, what we're going to want to do is do the global variable -1, right? -1. So remember, we're in this sprite, the green, and let's change the name of it so that we can keep track of it. So green button. Here we have green button. So now we go to controls, right? Because we're in the script of the green button. And we do when I am clicked. So when the green button is clicked, right? Let's do change global variable by -1, right? So let's start from 0 again. We press the green flag, it's going to start from 0. Remember, that is in the original Alonso script, green flag, global variable set to 1. in the Alonzo script, if I click on him, we're going to have change global variable by 1 or add +1. We have a similar thing in the red button. When I click on the red button, change global variable by 1. But when we do the green button, we're changing the variable by -1. So press that. So if I press on Alonzo, oh, global variable up 1. The red button, global variable +1 equals 2, and so forth, keeps going up. But if I press the green, it's going to go down, go down, go down, go down into the negative, right? So this is the point, that these global variables that you can create here, you can use them across the entire program. And that's very important to understand. If we were looking at programming, right, and I'm just going to take an example of JavaScript, like if we would do it with real code, or at least pseudocode, because it's not going to be completely real at the moment, but I'll explain it as I go. So if we were doing JavaScript, right, with JavaScript, you declare a variable using var, right? So if we had, this is the code, right, var, which is the variable, right, we would do global variable equals 0, and then you put one of these equals 0 with a semicolon. You have to put the semicolon. It's very important when you're doing this with this programming, so that it can go on to the next line. So var, right, is declaring the variable, and we're calling the variable global variable, and we're saying it's equal to 0. This is equivalent to pressing the green flag and setting the global variable to 0. This is what's going to happen right at the beginning, right? So now we're going to do a function. This is going to be like when Alonzo is clicked. So function, right? Alonzo clicked. And then you do open parentheses, close parentheses. That's just like kind of how it works in JavaScript, right? And then we have these brackets. So now we're going to do an if statement. So if Alonzo is clicked, or if the Alonzo sprite is clicked, so if, right? And then within the parentheses, we're saying if whatever happens inside the parentheses. Now this is the pseudocode part, because the actual way to code this is a lot more complicated, but they make it really simple when you do it in Snap. So I'm going to keep it simple so that you understand the concept, right? So we're going to say sprite Alonzo is clicked. Now remember, this isn't real JavaScript right here. This is pseudocode right here. To actually do this would be a lot more complicated, but this is emulating exactly what is done in Snap. Global variable equal to global variable +1, right? So to understand this pseudocode, we're setting up the global variable equal to 0. We defined it. We said var. We're saying we're creating a variable called global variable, and we're setting it equal to 0. And then we created a function called Alonzo clicked. And if the sprite Alonzo is clicked, global variable, sorry, I'm gonna do it like this. Set global variable equal to global variable +1. And then we got to close that. We're closing it here, and then close it again because we have the function, right? Now let's continue, because we have other things that we have there on the screen, right? So if we have function green ball clicked, right? We're going to do if sprite green ball is clicked, if sprite green ball is clicked, right? Global variable, it's the same as the other one, equal to global variable +1, Same thing. And then we close it and close it again. We can go ahead and copy and paste this again because now we have the red ball, right? So now we do red ball, sprite, red ball is clip, global variable equals global variable -1, right? Oops, and I forgot these things. Okay, so this is pseudocode. This isn't real code, but this is just an understanding of what you're doing in Snap in a way that can be coded, right? So set up your variable, define your variable. This is your global variable set to 0. Then we have functions. Alonzo clicked, and then what it does is if Spirit Alonzo is clicked, set global variable equal to global variable +1, which means the global variable will be 1 now. If green ball is clicked, same process, we're doing global variable +1, right? If it's the red ball, we're doing global variable -1. So every time these are clicked, these are functions, right? Every time you're clicking on them, it's actually changing the value here. And the computer is actually going to remember the value until you restart the program, because we haven't set up any function to reset this to 0 except to restart the program. In Snap, you know, we set the green flag, and then when the green flag, so we could even write that function, like let's do that in pseudocode. So we could do function press green flag, right? What are we gonna do? We're gonna do global variable equal to 0. So what that would do is that would reset the global variable equal to 0. Oops, we got to do this. Nope, not that. This, like that, right? So this would be that function. So that's how you would do it in code, and how it would compare to what it would look like in Snap. All right, so that's global variables, and next time we will look at local variables. All right, well, now let's look at what it would look like if we were doing local variables. Okay, so to do a local variable, we go to the same variable area, and we use this right here, this gray script variables thing. So we pull that in. So we're gonna do, we're actually gonna do the when green flag is clicked again, right? When green flag is flipped. And now we're gonna set up a script variable just for this sprite and just for this script. So we're going to change this right here to local variable, right? Okay, so now we have a script, a local variable that's only within this script. It's a little bit more complicated if we're doing local variables, because there's a little bit more code we have to write in Snap. But one of the first things we're going to want to do is we want to be able to see what the local variable is. Unlike these variables, the global variables, which have these little toggle switches that allow you to see it, a local variable won't. So for a local variable, what we have to do, we actually have to bring in the looks, and we're going to have our friend Alonzo actually say the local variable. So we can pull in this say hello for 2 seconds. And here, this local variable, we can pull it out and we can get that. So say local variable for 2 seconds. So now if I press the green flag, it says 0. I don't know if you saw that. It says 0 right here. Okay, so say local variable for 2 seconds. Now, we're going to have to add a forever loop. The forever loop means that once it gets into the forever loop, it's going to go back and forth, going over and over. And this is like what the program is. Now, we don't have the same functions like when this is clicked for local variables. So we're just going to do something a little bit different. We're going to do an if statement. So we're going to say if if the cursor touches Alonzo. So we're going to have to go into sensing, and then we're going to do touching. So basically, if the mouse pointer is touching Alonzo, then we're going to change, go back to variables, we're going to change the local variable by 1, which means we're just going to add 1 to the local variable. And then we're going to say it again, just so that we know that it actually was set, that it actually went up. So we're going to go back here, say, and we're going to pull out this, not that one. We need to copy it. So pull it out from here and put it in here. So we're going to say the local variable for 2 seconds. So now, if we press the green flag, right, we have 0. And if I go over, now 1. And if I go over, now 2. And if I go over, now 3. So now, so we know this is working, right? We know, and so if I press the green flag, it's going to go back to 0. And if I go over him, it's going to do 1, 2, 3. Now, if we were to try to do that, right, with the red button, right, we can't do that. That variable, right, it doesn't exist. We would have to create a new variable for that. You can't just pull it in like these global variables. So these local variables are just for this one script and can't leave this one script. So that's the big difference between a local variable, which is just going to stay within this one script, and a global variable, which will work across all scripts and all sprites. So now let's take a look at what it looks like in pseudocode. On the left-hand side, you have the global variable, where we're defining var global variable equals 0 before the function. And on the right-hand side, as you can see, we have the local variable, and we have a function called mouse pointer touch Alonzo, and then within that, we have var local variable equals 0. And as you can see, the var, you're defining the variable within the function. This is a similar thing as in Snap, where you're actually defining the local variable within that little script. It's the same thing here, you're defining within it. In the global side, you define it before you actually did the function, and it can be used on several functions as you saw before. Well, that's it for local and global variables. Bye-bye.